Imagine waking up to breaking news that changes everything. Chinese military forces have crossed the Taiwan Strait. Missiles are hitting Taiwanese air bases. Naval vessels are surrounding the island. And every government on Earth is scrambling to decide what to do in the next few hours. This isn't a hypothetical from the distant future. Senior military officials in the United States, Taiwan, and China have all publicly stated that the risk of military conflict over Taiwan is higher right now than at any point in the last 70 years. The question isn't really if. For many analysts, the question is when. And what happens next? What if China invades Taiwan? This is one of the most consequential geopolitical scenarios of the 21st century. Because Taiwan isn't just an island of 23 million people. It's the center of the global semiconductor industry, the linchpin of American credibility in Asia, and the test case for whether the international order established after World War II still means anything. What happens in the Taiwan Strait in the next decade could reshape the global balance of power for a century. Today we're going to analyze what would actually happen: the military operation, the American response, the economic shockwave, and the long-term implications for every country on Earth. This isn't about taking sides. It's about understanding the mechanics of the most dangerous potential conflict on the planet right now. Let's dive in. First, let's understand why Taiwan matters so much. Because for most people watching from outside Asia, Taiwan seems like a distant territorial dispute. It is not. Taiwan produces approximately 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. The chips that go into every iPhone, every data center, every military weapon system, every modern car, every piece of AI infrastructure on Earth. The company TSMC, based in Taiwan, manufactures chips so advanced that no other company on the planet can make them. Not in America, not in Europe, not in China. Only in Taiwan. If Taiwan's semiconductor industry is destroyed or captured in a Chinese invasion, the global technology supply chain collapses overnight. Every industry that depends on advanced chips, which is every industry, faces an immediate production crisis. The economic impact would dwarf the 2008 financial crisis and COVID combined. This is why Taiwan matters. Not just to Taiwan, to everyone. Now let's talk about how a Chinese invasion would actually work, because it wouldn't look like a Hollywood movie. China has been preparing for a Taiwan invasion scenario for decades. Their military doctrine calls for what they describe as a joint island landing campaign. The operation would begin with what military planners call the preparation phase. Days or weeks of cyber attacks on Taiwan's infrastructure, power grids going down, communication systems disrupted, financial systems attacked. The goal is to degrade Taiwan's ability to coordinate a defense before a single soldier sets foot on the island. Simultaneously, a massive missile barrage. China has approximately 2,000 ballistic and cruise missiles within range of Taiwan. The opening hours of any invasion would see hundreds of missiles targeting Taiwan's air bases, naval ports, radar installations, and command centers. The goal is air superiority before the amphibious assault begins. Then the ships, moving 100,000 soldiers across the Taiwan Strait, a body of water 180 kilometers wide, under fire against a prepared defense, is one of the most difficult military operations imaginable. Military analysts call the Taiwan Strait the most dangerous waterway on Earth for an amphibious assault. The tides, the weather windows, the beach geography, all of it favors the defender. This is why many military analysts believe China doesn't actually want to invade Taiwan. They want Taiwan to capitulate without a fight, convinced that resistance is hopeless. The invasion threat is leverage, not necessarily intent. But let's assume it happens. Here's a question I want you to think about. If China launched a military invasion of Taiwan tomorrow, do you think the United States would send military forces to defend it? Not what the treaties say. What do you think would actually happen? Let me know in the comments, because this question divides military experts, politicians, and ordinary people in fascinating ways. The American response is the most consequential variable in the entire scenario. The United States has maintained what's called strategic ambiguity toward Taiwan for 50 years. America sells Taiwan weapons. America has unofficial diplomatic relations with Taiwan. And the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979 commits the United States to providing Taiwan with defensive arms and says that any attempt to determine Taiwan's future by non-peaceful means is of grave concern to the United States. Grave concern, not a military guarantee. Deliberately ambiguous. The ambiguity exists for a reason. If America explicitly guaranteed Taiwan's defense, China might feel forced to act before American military buildup made invasion impossible. If America explicitly abandoned Taiwan, China might invade immediately. The ambiguity is supposed to deter both outcomes. But the moment invasion begins, the ambiguity has to end. And that decision, made in Washington in the first hours of a Chinese invasion, would be the most consequential military decision since 1945. If America intervenes militarily, we are in a direct conflict between the world's two largest economies, both nuclear powers. If America doesn't intervene, Taiwan falls, and every American alliance in Asia, South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Australia, instantly becomes uncertain. If America won't fight for Taiwan, why would it fight for anyone? The credibility of American security guarantees worldwide collapses, and every country that currently shelters under American deterrence has to immediately reconsider its strategic position. Some would pursue nuclear weapons. Some would accommodate China. The entire post-World War II security architecture built on American power projection disintegrates. Now let's talk about the economic consequences. Because even a conflict that stays conventional, no nuclear weapons, would trigger an economic catastrophe unlike anything in living memory. Taiwan produces those advanced semiconductors I mentioned, but it also sits at the center of global shipping lanes. Roughly 40% of global container shipping passes through the waters around Taiwan. A military conflict in the Taiwan Strait would close those lanes. Insurance rates would make them impassable even for ships not directly targeted. Within weeks of a conflict beginning, global supply chains would be in crisis. Not just for chips, for everything that moves by sea through that part of the world, which is most things. The chip shortage of 2021, triggered by a modest COVID disruption, caused car manufacturers to shut down production lines, consumer electronics to disappear from shelves, and cost the global economy an estimated $240 billion. A Taiwan invasion doesn't create a chip shortage, it creates a chip elimination. Every factory dependent on advanced semiconductors either shuts down or operates on emergency reserves counted in weeks. Global GDP would contract sharply. Unemployment would spike in every major economy simultaneously. The economic pain would be felt not just in countries involved in the conflict, but in every country that participates in the modern economy, which is all of them. Here's something that changes how you think about this entire scenario. TSMC, Taiwan's semiconductor company, has already begun building factories in Arizona and Japan. The United States government has passed the CHIPS Act, investing $52 billion to build domestic semiconductor manufacturing. This isn't just industrial policy, it's strategic preparation. America is trying to reduce its dependence on Taiwan's chips so that a Chinese invasion becomes less economically catastrophic. Whether that preparation succeeds before any conflict occurs is one of the defining races of our era. If China successfully took Taiwan and its semiconductor industry was captured intact rather than destroyed, China would control 90% of the world's most advanced chip production. The economic leverage that would give Beijing over every advanced economy on Earth is almost incomprehensible. Every country that needs cutting-edge chips, which is every country with a modern military, a modern economy, or modern infrastructure, would be dependent on Chinese goodwill. That scenario, more than any military consideration, is why the United States and its allies treat the Taiwan question as existential. What happens to Taiwan's people in this scenario is the dimension that gets lost in geopolitical analysis. 23 million people, one of the most successful democracies in Asia, a high-income economy, a society that has built something genuinely worth preserving. In a military conflict, civilian casualties would be significant. Taiwan's cities are densely populated. The weapons involved would be imprecise. The historical record of forced unification campaigns is not reassuring. The absorption of a resistant population into an authoritarian system is never clean or peaceful, regardless of what the government doing it calls it. The human cost of a Taiwan invasion is not abstract. It is 23 million people whose lives, freedoms, and futures would be determined by decisions made in Beijing, Washington, and military command centers they have no influence over. Let's talk about what the world looks like after either outcome. If China takes Taiwan and the world accepts it, as it largely accepted Russia taking Crimea in 2014, the message is clear. Military force works. Democracies will protest and sanction, but not fight. The strong take what they want. Every authoritarian government on Earth recalibrates accordingly. If China attempts to take Taiwan and fails, either through military defeat or because the economic cost of conflict becomes unbearable, China's domestic political situation becomes unstable. The Communist Party's legitimacy rests partly on nationalist promises about Taiwan. Failure there is politically catastrophic for Beijing. What happens inside China when that narrative collapses is genuinely unpredictable. If the conflict escalates beyond conventional weapons, we are in territory no one can predict with any confidence. Both China and the United States have nuclear arsenals. Neither would use them lightly. But escalation dynamics, once started, have their own momentum. History's most dangerous conflicts were rarely planned to go as far as they did. After everything we've explored, the military complexity, the semiconductor dependency, the collapse of American credibility, the economic catastrophe, the human cost, the nuclear risk. Do you think a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is inevitable? Or do you think deterrence will hold? And what do you personally think the right response would be if it happened tomorrow? Drop your answer in the comments because there is no consensus among experts and your perspective matters. So, what have we learned? Taiwan is not a distant territorial dispute. It is the center of the global semiconductor supply chain, the test of American deterrence, the potential trigger for the most economically destructive conflict since World War II, and the question that will define the 21st century's balance of power. The scenario has no good outcomes, only less catastrophic ones. The world has been lucky that deterrence has held for 70 years. Whether it holds for the next 10, is the most important geopolitical question alive today. If this kept you thinking, make sure to subscribe, because next week, we're exploring a threat that doesn't come from any government or army. What if a pandemic worse than COVID hit tomorrow? Not a 2% mortality virus, something with the transmissibility of COVID and the lethality of Ebola. The epidemiology, the collapse of healthcare systems, and the terrifying speed at which a true catastrophic pandemic could spread before anyone even knew it had started. Thanks for watching, and remember, the most dangerous conflicts are the ones where everyone believes someone else will back down first. I'll see you in the next one.